Hello, my name is Judge Billy Ray Stubblefield. I want to invite you to join the Williamson County Sesquicentennial Committee in a look back on 150 years of our county's history. It's a story, of course, of people, but it's also a story of the land itself. At any rate, we want you to relax, look back with us over that 150 years, and also join us in a look at Williamson County as it is today.
In the 17th and 18th centuries, both French and Spanish explorers passed through the area that would become Williamson County in 1848. To the first inhabitants, the appeal of Williamson County certainly included the clear water of the San Gabriel River. More than 10,000 years ago, prehistoric man would find water, caves for shelter, and abundant game. Williamson County is divided into two distinct halves by the Balcones Escarpment, a geologic fault which leaves the wooded limestone hills to the west and the flat Blackland Prairie to the east. When these explorers arrived, the Tonkawa Indians were the most numerous people in the area. They were hunter-gatherers and often bent small trees and saplings to indicate a source for water, food, or directions. This Tonkawa signal tree is west of Georgetown. Numerous caves provided shelter, and large herds of buffalo grazed on the prairie land in the east and north part of the region. Apaches and Comanches were occasional visitors to the area. In 1828, the Delaware Nation moved from their homeland in East Texas to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. They mapped out the Double File Trail, so named because two horsemen could ride along it side by side. This trail crosses Williamson County. We know about these earliest residents because in 1982, the construction of Highway 1431 between Leander and Round Rock caused the discovery of the remains of a female. She was named the Leanderthal Lady. She is believed to have been 20 to 30 years old when she died about 10,500 years ago during the Pleistocene period. In 1821, Empresario Stephen F. Austin brought 300 families to the province of Coahuila, Texas, in New Spain. This opened the gate for thousands of immigrants to settle in Texas. Those first settlers brought ideas of democracy and freedom of religion and education. In the fall of 1835, because of Indian difficulties and settlements along the Colorado River, Austin hired a group of rangers to build forts to protect the settlers. Under the leadership of Major Robert McAlpin Williamson and Captain John J. Tumlinson, 60 mounted men built a blockhouse-type fort on Brushy Creek in the area east of today's U.S. Highway 183 between Cedar Park and Leander. Those who settled at Blockhouse or Tumlinson Fort were the first people from the United States to inhabit the area that would become Williamson County. Captain Tumlinson's men cut steps in a large oak tree to use for a lookout and were busy watching for Indians when they got word from General Sam Houston to come act as scouts for the Texian Army. Their duties led them to the San Jacinto River, where they fought with the Texian Army for their independence. Texas won its independence from Mexico on April 21, 1836, at the Battle of San Jacinto. Tumlinson and his men never returned to the fort, and it was burned down by the Indians and never rebuilt. The first permanent settlement in the county was Kenney Fort, built above Brushy Creek in the area that would later become Round Rock. In the summer of 1839, a physician named Thomas Kenney of Bastrop built a picket fort. In November of 1839, Dr. Kenney brought his wife, Mary Jane Polly, and their 3 daughters to live at the fort. Daughter Mary Jane Kenney Lee described the fort.
Daddy's fort was a square picketed one with round and split saplings, higher than the eaves of the cabins, of which there were 4. one in each corner, with space in between each cabin. There were 2 large gates, one on the west side, the other on the east side.
About this same time, difficulties with the Indians, mostly Comanches, were at their highest. In February 1839, the Battle of Brushy Creek occurred south of Taylor. This was one of the last major fights between Texas settlers and Comanche Indians. 4 settlers were killed in this skirmish. Later, in the summer of 1839, the Webster Massacre occurred near what is now Leander. Comanche Indians killed 14 men of the John Webster wagon train and took Mrs. Webster and her 2 children captive. Those settlers were killed between the North and South San Gabriel rivers and were later buried in a common grave east of present-day Leander in the Davis Cemetery. About this time, Adam Lawrence, one of the first settlers in Texas, built a log cabin on his 3,000-acre farm southeast of Taylor. He established a Lawrence Chapel Cemetery and a Methodist church, which was one of the earliest in the area. During 1836 to 1846, the decade of the Republic of Texas, the area was being settled by the early pioneers who claimed their land grants in what was then the Milam District. Among these was John Berry, a veteran of the War of 1812, who built a grist mill north of present-day Georgetown. This mill, one of the first in Williamson County, was known as Berry's Creek. One of its grist stones is on the courthouse lawn in Georgetown. On February 19, 1846, the Lone Star flag of the Republic of Texas was lowered, and the Stars and Stripes was raised above the Capitol in Austin. Texas became the 28th state in the Union and the largest to that date, covering more than 267,000 square miles. As the newest state, Texas attracted settlers, many of whom settled in Milam County. Washington Anderson and James O. Rice circulated 2 petitions to create a new county out of the western part of Milam. These petitions were signed by 107 residents. On March 13, 1848, the state government approved the creation of a new county. The suggested names of San Gabriel or Clearwater were rejected by the legislature in favor of honoring one of their own, former Judge Robert McAlpin Williamson, who was retiring from the legislature that year. Williamson was the same Major Williamson of the Texas Rangers who had overseen the establishment of Tumlinson Fort a decade earlier. He was nicknamed Three-Legged Willie. As a result of a childhood affliction, his right leg was drawn up at a 90-degree angle to the ground. He wore a peg leg connected at the knee, and when he walked, it appeared as though he had 3 legs. This had not deterred him from becoming a frontier lawyer, buffalo hunter, newspaper editor, head of the Texas Rangers, circuit riding judge, representative and senator of the Republic, and senator of the state of Texas. He has been called the Patrick Henry of the Texas Revolution, and his role in establishing the rule of law during the rough-and-tumble days of the Republic cannot be ignored. At least 250 people lived in Williamson County when it was officially organized. Today the population is approaching 250,000. After the legislature created the county, the next order of business was to select a site for the county seat. The problem was solved when George Washington Glasscock Sr. and his business partner, Thomas B. Hewling, who was a member of the Texas legislature, donated 170 acres for a new county seat. It took Glasscock's first name in remembrance of the donation, and in 1848 the county seat was named Georgetown. With the county seat declared, activities and interest in the area increased. Times were not easy for these early travelers, but the bountiful land attracted families. The mode of travel for these new settlers was horseback or wagon. A good blacksmith shop and saddlery store were important to the community. The Schaefer Saddlery was located on the Courthouse Square in Georgetown, on the site of the log cabin that had served as the first courthouse. The Kimbrough Blacksmith Shop in Georgetown was not far from the San Gabriel River, where the San Gabriel Park is now located. The early homes of the 1840s and 50s were a log construction, like this cabin built by Samuel Mather of Gabriel Mills in 1850. In 1850, the county had grown to approximately 1,400 residents, with 155 being slaves. Only 3% of the settlers were slave owners at this time. The 1850s also ushered in a boom in the establishment of small communities within a one-day horseback ride of the new county seat. Post offices began to be established in such places as Rice's Crossing in 1849, Brushy Creek, now Round Rock, in 1851, Liberty Hill in 1853, Bagdad and Pond Springs in 1855, and Florence and Circleville in 1857. River crossings without bridges were often hazardous, and those on the San Gabriel River were no different. Settlers sought a low water level and a rock bottom to cross. Mencken's Crossing, east of Georgetown, with its limestone bottom, was especially popular with farmers as early as 1849. Named for Samuel Menkens, the community near this crossing included a school, church, and cotton gin. During the 1850s, Williamson County folks made most of their clothing by hand and furniture from material produced at home. Farm families spent their time growing, chopping, and picking cotton, as well as carding, spinning, weaving, or knitting wool. Cooking was done in the fireplace or outside in the yard. In 1857, a wheat and corn mill was built on the San Gabriel River at Water Valley, which was later renamed Jonah. When the first families reached Williamson County, they noted the region was new and thinly settled, with wild game abounding from the scrawny jackrabbit to the majestic buffalo. In 1861, the United States was awash with rumors of a civil war. The nation was divided over slavery and states' rights issues. The years between 1861 and 1865 were difficult in Williamson County, not only for the soldiers away at war, but also for the women and children left behind tending the crops and the livestock. Following the Civil War years, cattle became a thriving industry for the area. Cattle drives usually ended at the railhead in Abilene, Kansas, or Omaha, Nebraska. As the cattle drives went north to the Chisholm Trail, and as newborn calves were abandoned, being so young and frail, the children of Bryce Smart would rescue them and save them from dying. One unusual cattle drive up the Chisholm Trail was that of Harriet and George W. Cluck and their 3 children from the present-day Cedar Park. Harriet was expecting her 4th child, who was born when they arrived at the railhead in Abilene, Kansas in 1871. The need to have places of worship became evident as religious groups built churches throughout the county. Georgetown was continuing to grow, with most religious denominations building churches in the area.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the house of God.
The First Presbyterian Church of Georgetown was originally organized in June of 1854. Additions and improvements were made in the 1870s when a bell was purchased for $69.15. The Wesley Chapel AME Church of Georgetown was organized by the African American community in 1869. It was one of the earliest Texas missionary African Methodist Episcopal churches. The original wooden building was replaced with this sanctuary in 1904. The original Evangelical Free Church, first called Brushy Evangelical Free Church, was organized by the large number of Swedish immigrants coming to the county. The Gustav Johnson family of Jonah was a typical Swedish family that belonged to this church. By 1871, other Swedish settlers had organized a Methodist Episcopal church and cemetery south of Georgetown. Known as St. John's, this congregation moved to Georgetown and built a native limestone sanctuary in 1906. Services were held in the Swedish language until the 1940s. All of the early preachers were Swedish. Georgetown's first United Methodist Church was founded in 1849 and was served by circuit riders or traveling ministers until 1879. The present church structure on University Avenue was finished in 1893 using native limestone that was hand-cut on site. One of the most historic Baptist churches in Williamson County is the Andis Baptist Church, where the noted speaker, Reverend Freeman Smalley, conducted services before it was officially organized in 1851. The church members first met in a log schoolhouse built by Joshua Stapp. The first pastor, Josiah Andrews, used to hang his pistol on a peg of the Bible stand where he gave his sermon. The First United Methodist Church of Bartlett was first organized as the Indian Creek Church. Services were held in a store, schoolhouse, and nearby Baptist church before the first part of the sanctuary was built in 1912. The final structure was dedicated in 1921 by Reverend H.A. Boaz, who later became president of Southern Methodist University in Dallas. Sunday was reserved for church, but on Saturdays the town square in Georgetown was crowded with shoppers. Here is William O. Stubblefield with his horse. And here is Round Rock resident A.J. Nelson bringing his cotton crop to Georgetown in his horse-drawn wagon. One of Georgetown's earliest residents who was in the forefront of business development was M.Z. Taylor. A captain in the Confederacy, M.Z. led efforts to establish the first college, a national bank, a regional railroad line, and a water utility service. He took special pride in forming the city's volunteer fire department and served as the first chief. He died in 1895. This early building housed the city's offices, police, jail, and fire department. In 1888, this French Bastille-style jail was constructed of native limestone at a cost of $22,000. The Georgetown Square had a distinctive look in 1877 to 78 when this fourth courthouse was built. This early structure would be replaced with the present-day courthouse in 1910-1911. This fifth and current building was constructed at a cost of $120,000. Renovations in 1965 changed much of the appearance. However, the fine classical elements remain, with the columned porticos and a dome of copper, restored with a four-faced clock and justice stand. Following the end of the Civil War, public education was booming, and Williamson County was in need of an institution of higher learning. In Round Rock, the Texas Masonic Grand Lodge had chartered the Greenwood Masonic Institute in 1859, and Georgetown was looking for a school of higher education. In 1870, Georgetown Community College opened in a building at the present-day 507 East University Avenue. At this same time, Texas Methodists were planning a new university, merging 4 pre-Civil War colleges. A union charter was granted in 1873 for a Methodist college in Georgetown, on the site of the early community college. The new school, named Texas University, was asked in 1875 to yield its name to a soon-to-be-established state university. The Methodist school in Georgetown was renamed Southwestern University. In 1900, it moved to its present location east of the original site. In 1923 to 24, a new Georgetown High School was built on the site where Georgetown College and Southwestern had been. Before schools were integrated in the mid-1960s, Georgetown had another school, Carver High School. The high school and its football team, shown here, played an important role in the African American community. Reunions held today draw former students from Texas and beyond. Trading and commerce were important to the Georgetown community. The Williamson County Sun newspaper was first published in 1877. This building at 8th and Austin Avenue on the square was built about 1870 by Moses Steele as a mercantile business and a bank. In early 1900, it became the Macomb Hotel. Nearby is the old Farmers State Bank building, presently being renovated into the Williamson County Museum. Also on Austin Avenue is the David Love Store, which was built by a South Carolina native as a mercantile business in the 1880s. One block south is the Art Deco structure, the Palace Theater, built in the 1920s and typical of many small-town theaters, holding a special place in the hearts of many old-timers. Childhood memories are shared by a native Georgetown resident.
The Palace was a little theater that showed second-run movies, the B movies from Hollywood, and they generally would have a movie on for 2 nights. On the weekends, you would have a little bit better movie, and it would run for 3 nights. We had a popcorn machine at the front of the Palace Theater that made the best popcorn that I've ever had, and still the best popcorn I ever had.
Georgetown has always been known for beautiful structures, with over 180 on the National Register of Historic Places. One of the many historic homes is the Harrell Stone House. This Victorian-style house was built about 1895 at 1404 Elm Street. This home was built by the Belford Lumber Company in 1910. Located at 1252 Main Street, the home was influenced by the Prairie School of Architecture with wide overhanging eaves, low horizontal lines, and Tuscan columns. The Easley home at 1310 Olive Street was built in 1913 by Samuel and Roberta Easley and remained in the family until 1968. An educational attraction discovered in 1963 was Inner Space Cavern. Core drilling for the overpass south of Georgetown during the construction of Interstate 35 resulted in a discovery of the cavern. The cavern was carved by water from the Edwards Aquifer from limestone that lies along the Balcones Fault. The geology is Cretaceous, estimated at more or less 100 million years old. Over 80,000 years in the making, Texas's newest and most accessible commercial cavern harbors the remains of mastodons and other Ice Age animals among its spectacular stalagmites and stalactites. Georgetown and Williamson County have a large population of German, Czechoslovakian, and Swedish immigrants. The Theon community, 10 miles north of Georgetown, was settled by people from Austria, Bohemia, Germany, Moravia, and Silesia in the 1880s. The community grew around the cotton gin, built in 1883. A mainstay of Theon was the August Kalmbach store. The beautiful Holy Trinity Catholic Church was built in 1913. Nearby, Cornhill Cemetery was established in 1886 to serve this small farming community. The nearby Red and White store in Gerald, north of Georgetown, was a vital part of commerce. Northeast of Georgetown is Walberg, named after Henry Düring's birthplace in Germany. German and Wendish settlers organized Zion Lutheran Church in 1882 and nearby St. Peter's Lutheran Church in 1889. The Walberg State Bank has been serving the residents of Williamson County since 1913. Traveling south of Georgetown, we find the community of Round Rock, which had the first permanent settlement in Williamson County at Kenney Fort in 1839. Most of the early development was within close proximity to the easily recognized Round Rock. Just north of the Rock, the Alex Harris store at number 4 Chisholm Trail was one of the largest operations in the area. In 1853, just south of the Rock, this home was constructed of native limestone quarried from nearby Brushy Creek. This house was at one time a home for retired Cumberland Presbyterian ministers and their wives. In 1853, Anna Palm brought her family to Round Rock from Sweden. Her son, Andrew J. Palm, built this farmhouse in 1873. The Palm Valley area east of Round Rock would become one of the leading Swedish immigrant settlements in Texas. The Swedish families held church services from the beginning and officially organized Palm Valley Lutheran Congregation in 1870. This beautiful Gothic Revival church building was erected in 1894. The A.J. Nelson home was built by Swedish masons repaying the cost of their voyage to America. Another rock structure built with native limestone was the St. Charles Hotel north of the Round Rock on Brushy Creek. In the 1870s, Williamson County would change with the arrival of the railroads. In 1876, the International and Great Northern Railroad arrived east of Round Rock, and a new town was begun. The original town of Round Rock on the Chisholm Trail would be called Old Town.
Williamson County was almost entirely rural and agriculture. I can remember real well what an impact the fall of the year you'd have on the bank here in Round Rock when the farmers all came to town, would sow their cotton and all of their crops and everything. And of course now agriculture doesn't impact Round Rock at all. There's very few farmers around here anymore. But when I came here, there was a big cotton gin about 1 block south of Main Street. And if you can imagine, if you've ever been around a cotton gin in 1950, all of the dust and the lint and everything that comes from it, and just downtown Round Rock, including right here where this palm house, it was just covered with trash and lint, and nothing was air conditioned. All the stores were just, it was real hot in there. In one year it got so hot that all the candy melted in the store. Rudolph Peterson told me that. I think that was in the 50s. And we had a drought in the 50s. From 1950 to 1957, it was very, very dry in this area. And Round Rock was a sleepy little town, had one red light. There was an old gentleman here in Round Rock named August Johnson that lived down there east of town, and he came to town in an old Model T touring car. And when he crossed the street up there, he would just cross diagonally. He never did go down to the corners and make right angles. He just did everything on a diagonal, and you had to kind of watch out for him. Adolph Anderson would come to the gin with a pair of mules in a wagon, and his mules were real crazy. And sometimes when the gin started up, they'd run away and cause quite a commotion down here in downtown, and he'd have to circle them a few times and get them back under the gin, and they'd find enough men to get a hold of them, or they'd unhook them where they could gin this cotton.
Business was active in New Round Rock. Main Street businesses included a new bank. In the summer of 1878, 27-year-old outlaw Sam Bass came to town with his gang. He had planned on robbing the bank on Saturday, but instead was shot on Friday afternoon when Deputy Sheriff A.W. Grimes questioned Bass about wearing a gun in town. A gunfight ensued, and the wounded Sam Bass rode out of town, but was captured the next day by Texas Rangers as he sat leaning up against a tree. Brought into Newtown, where he died, he is buried in a Round Rock cemetery next to the slave section. Round Rock prospered, and the Nelson family built this commercial building and a beautiful home a block east. This classical revival home at 405 East Main Street is officially known as the Nelson Crier House. A few blocks away at 1000 East Main Street was the Trinity Lutheran College, which opened October 2, 1906, with a faculty of 4, 48 academic students, and 11 enrolled in music classes. One of Round Rock's most prosperous businesses has been the production of white lime. Begun in the late 1800s, the processing of limestone has provided area jobs for over 100 years. Today, only the Austin White Lime Company remains in operation. Another business that had a big influence for Round Rock and area farmers was the cheese factory. It was an excellent way of selling extra milk and provided needed farm revenue. During the Great Depression, the cheese factory represented 2/3 of the total payroll of Round Rock. Schools continue to be important throughout the county. West of Round Rock, the Pond Springs community had built a log schoolhouse in 1854. Pond Springs also had a post office and store, but the railroad bypassed the community in 1882. John G. Jolly, his wife Nancy, and their 6 daughters settled in the southwestern corner of the county following his return from serving the Confederacy. Jolly gave land for a school that was built near his log home, store, and blacksmith shop. In 1998, the unique 200-year-old Jollyville Circle tree is all that remains of the Jolly home place. In the 1970s, when Austin was expanding north, the Jollyville area was the first part of Williamson County to be annexed into Austin. The first permanent settlement in the Leander area was established in 1850, called Bagdad. The Heinitz home still remains. When the railroad bypassed Bagdad in 1882, the town of Leander was established, with new stores, blacksmith shops, a bank, and a depot. Even the churches moved to the new town. Leander had a first-class school system. Lady teachers in those days were required to remain single. The community theater provided local entertainment. Liberty Hill's history predates the founding of Williamson County. Liberty Hill began to develop very early along a stagecoach line from Austin to Burnet. As a town on the far western edge of the county, Liberty Hill has continued to maintain a western atmosphere. Early schools were of prime concern to the community. By the time the railroad came through, the citizens were petitioning for a Liberty Hill Normal and Business College. The college opened in January 1885 and closed in 1910. The Bryson Stagecoach Stop was part of the John T. Bryson home, built in the 1850s in Liberty Hill. Some of the downtown buildings remain, including the Stubblefield Building. Churches have been an important part of the area, and they remain active, most for more than a century. Baptizing often took place in a river. Not far from Liberty Hill was the community of Gabriel Mills. The Gabriel Mills store served all the farmers and ranchers in the far western corner of Williamson County. The early mill was built by Sam Mather in 1849 on the North San Gabriel River, but the mill and early bridges were washed away. In Liberty Hill, rock is still quarried today, but farming was the major livelihood, and hog killing was an important event on the farm. A lot of activity occurred when the time came to butcher hogs.
Community would get out and have a hog killing. Everybody would bring 4, 5, 6, 7 hogs there, and they would all kill them together. And then they would spread up the meat, and my mama used to make sausage and can them and put them in jars. We used to can corn, we had a big canner. You can the corn and seal it with a sealer. We used to go out and pour corn, and we would raise everything except you go buy sugar and coffee. You raise the rest of it. You had your hogs, you had your chickens, you had your turkeys, you had your milk, you had your beef, you had it all. And you raised corn. You raised high gear. You raise and they brought some broom corn. Bert Fisher brought some broom corn, so everybody started doing broom corn. That stuff got hide your head. That stuff sting you like everything. So they would have a big strasher. Everybody would come together and strash the broom corn and get stuff. Or they come together and they would have what you call a community hay deal. You had an old a hay deal. You put it in your foot and trump that stuff down, and it was a tractor. And then you had then we run around the tractor. You had somebody tied out. You had all that.
Northwest of Georgetown, we find Andis, also one of the earliest communities in the county. Populated by area farms, the families built schools, churches, and stores and prided themselves for having a pioneer, self-reliant attitude. For the most part, life revolved around the church. The Cumberland Presbyterian Church and the Andis Baptist Church were established in the 19th century. This is the way downtown Andis looked in 1926. Early homes took full advantage of native stone for fireplaces and wood for lumber. The Smart McCormick home was built near Florence in 1855 and was one of the first landmarks honored with a historical medallion. Amy Cox Smart is shown drawing water from her well. Lucille Smith, shown in 1918, is from one of the early Andis families. The Gus Fisher family was one of the earliest black families in the county. World War II saw many of the young men of Andis in service to their country. Baby Lester Fisher is pictured with his sailor father, Emsey Fisher, before he returned to the naval service. Neighboring Florence's post office was created in 1857. It had a college for about 8 years in the 1890s, which provided an excellent education for area students. This residence was located on College Street. Main Street had large two-story homes. The W.C. Love Hardware and Grocery Store was well stocked to meet the needs of area families. The Acme Tailor Shop was well known and served many in the nearby area. Crossing the county east of Round Rock, Hutto was established in 1876 when the International and Great Northern Railroad extended a line from present-day Taylor to Round Rock. These fellows came to town on donkeys. The Swedish settlers around Hutto built neat, stylish homes and enjoyed posing for family portraits. This nearby cotton gin was necessary for the farmers, and this two-story public school served area youngsters. Farming was the livelihood for most Hutto area residents, and cotton was a major crop. 16-year-old Flo Kruger did not plan on staying down on the farm and entered a Taylor 4th of July beauty contest to further her goals and pursue her dreams. Soon churches sprang up for farm families. The Hutto Swedish Methodist Church was noted for its beautiful windows. The Lutheran Church of Hutto conducted services in Swedish until 1940. Many Hutto farmers grew cotton, but the town where cotton was king was further east, Taylor. The rail line that was laid down in Hutto and Taylor also established the town of Thrall in 1876. Thrall was a booming city after the turn of the century. Just north of Thrall was the thriving community of Sandoval. A store and church are all that remain today. Farmers raising cotton in the fertile black soil around Taylor needed a railroad stop to ship their cotton.
Now, I didn't like to pick cotton. I did not like to pick cotton. Now, they mind horn cotton. I didn't like to pick cotton. You used to have to pick that stuff. You didn't pull it. You picked it out of the bowl. And then later years they got where you could pick it, you could pull it. It was a little better. But we used to have them old ladies used to have them little gloves on, keep that stuff, and you just pull out the cotton.
During the Civil War, a cotton carding factory for the Confederacy was in operation north of Taylor near Circleville. Taylor, in 1878, with the economy booming from the cotton industry, began to grow a downtown that attracted people from the entire area. Taylor was the largest inland cotton market in the United States at one time. Other farming was important too. Discovery of oil nearby in the early 1900s was adding to the economy, as were gins needed to process cotton. Residents could afford new homes, and of course churches were established. In 1877, the First Christian Church of Taylor was founded, followed by the First Presbyterian Church and St. James Episcopal. John and Fanny Robinson helped establish the AME Church. Methodists in Taylor had two early churches, including a 10th Street Methodist Church, which first held services in 1896. St. Mary's Catholic Church, St. Paul Lutheran Church, and Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church all operated popular schools. In 1937, Lorraine Castro was Dieciséis Queen, presented by Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church. This church was also very important in the Mexican-American community, as was the Alamo School on Sturgis Street. Popular Mexican-American businesses included the Imperial Bakery and Grocery Store, operated by Ed Fuentes. Downtown Taylor had grown rapidly from the very beginning. By 1900, electricity had been installed, and businesses were proud to stock everything a shopper would need. Hard work came first, but time was taken for pleasure too. The Taylor Buckhorn Saloon was open for men only. A hayride was great fun for the younger folks. Parades were also popular, and Taylor residents often dressed in elaborate costumes. A well-known Taylor family, the Moody's, lived in this house on West 9th Street. Dan Moody was born June 1, 1893. As a young lawyer, he was appointed district attorney for Travis and Williamson counties. He won national attention by prosecuting the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s. In commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the Klan trial, a play was produced in the very courtroom where the trial took place in Georgetown. The play was based on a book by District Attorney Ken Anderson.
The Ku Klux Klan wraps itself in our American flag and believes in none of what you hold dear. They give secret orders, and if you disobey them, they will try you, convict you, and punish you on the side of the road while you are chained to a tree, helpless to defend yourself.
Largely as a result of his courageous stand against the Klan, Moody was elected Attorney General and almost immediately in 1926 elected Governor of Texas. At age 33, he was the youngest person ever to have served in that capacity, a record he still holds. Another nationally known Taylor man was black cowboy Bill Pickett. Born in 1870, the son of a slave, Pickett grew up in Taylor and became the inventor of bulldogging. He went on to become the first African American to be inducted into the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. Another nationally recognized black was Dr. James L. Dickey, who operated a hospital for many years and delivered a large number of babies from the Taylor community. North of Taylor, Granger was a community that was largely settled by Czech immigrants and was established when the railroads came through in 1882. In Granger, the first order of business was to build churches. The beautiful St. Cyril and Methodius Catholic Church has played a major part in the lives of the town and farm residents. When Father Pridle died in 1927, his funeral drew a large crowd. The Czech Brethren Church operated a large school. Ladies took particular care to dress in their Sunday best. Church services and weddings have always been formal. Copeland was originally settled by German and Swiss immigrants who built the St. Peter's United Church of Christ in 1905. Church services were conducted in German until 1929. Train passengers kept the depot and nearby stores and restaurants busy. It was a revelation to many when the first automobiles arrived in Williamson County about 1906. Many folks, especially farmers, were slow to give up their mules and horses. Change in the county was slow prior to World War I, but following the war, progress was more rapid. In 1914, when the war broke out in Europe, the fighting seemed too far away to be a threat. Gradually, Americans became more concerned and found it increasingly difficult to remain neutral. In April of 1917, President Woodrow Wilson declared it necessary that the world be made safe for democracy. The United States entered the war. Eventually, 4,800,000 Americans served in the conflict. Young men throughout Williamson County joined the service. Taylor resident Ples Rector was a member of an all-black Signal Corps unit serving in France. He was injured in a mustard gas attack. Families at home on the farm had much to do while praying for the safety of their loved ones. Soldiers who were killed in the war were honored back home with military funerals. The end of World War I was celebrated with Armistice Day parades throughout the county on November 11, 1918. Granger had 2 parades on the same day to celebrate the war to end all wars. The 1930s was one of the most difficult times in American history. Known as the Great Depression, the economic collapse left city people with no money, no jobs, and very little food. There was a collapse in farm prices which hit farmers hard. But compared to city dwellers, farm families fared better. At least they had enough to eat.
I remember wagons would come by and they would have vegetables, and by my grandfather having molasses mill, they would trade. They didn't have the money to sell. They would trade, and they get a bushel of tomatoes or cucumbers, and she put a watermelon rind, just name it, and she could sew. You know, she'd take a shirt and turn it upside down and put the buttons on the opposite side, right side, and take a pair of pants and make us a skirt. Just survived. And, you know, they also, during Depression time, they had give you flour with floured sacks. And, she could just do anything.
I just remember that, I can remember seeing people fight over an apple that somebody threw away that they hadn't completely eaten. People were hungry. And two boys had a fight over that apple one time when a girl threw it away. That gives you an idea about the intensity of the Depression about in the middle 30s. Personally, we had a dairy and we had a little money coming in all the time, and I didn't really seem like I suffered too much myself. We always had plenty to eat, got along real well, had milk and raised our own meat and own vegetables, and we just got along real good.
But in spite of the hard years, it was still important to have good times. Social events were usually simple, such as picnics or fishing, and home-brewed beer was especially popular with the German and Czech families. In Taylor, baseball teams and swimming were popular, and in Granger, local bands were kept busy. In 1939, when war broke out again in Europe, the United States was still struggling with the Depression. When Japan bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the country was officially at war again. Williamson County men and women joined the military by the hundreds. Before World War II ended in 1945, many county men had given their lives for democracy and to end fascism.
I had two older brothers. One of them served in the Pacific, and the brother just younger than him went to England and later on into France, where he was killed. He was the only World War II soldier killed in action from Round Rock.
Here at home in Williamson County, the war also had a marked effect upon Germans living in communities such as Wahlberg.
One thing we did during World War II is we immediately went from German to English. We added English because prior to that we were still having German services at all times. In fact, we had German services for a long, long time. And so we added English services, and we also had a banner. And each time that one of our members from our assigned church went into the service, a star was put up there. I remember it was the red, white, and blue colors were used on this banner. If and when the servicemen lost their lives and paid the supreme sacrifice, they received the gold star. We did have several of those, and I remember the heartache that went with that and the memorial services that we had for these. Every Sunday we would close our service by singing this patriotic song that I would like to sing for you. It went to the tune of God Bless Our Native Land, and it went like this, to the best of my memory. God bless our servicemen, guard and watch over them where'er they go. Let thine almighty word, thy spirit's mighty sword, sustain them all, O Lord, by thy great might.
The war brought pain and distress to families everywhere. Coming home was truly a special event. Lieutenant Ross Wilder of Taylor served with General James Doolittle in the bombing of Tokyo. Lieutenant Wilder enjoyed a 2-week furlough at home with the family in Taylor. Throughout the history of Williamson County, the San Gabriel River has connected the fields and the towns. Many creeks also traverse the county. Major flooding has occurred numerous times. In 1921, Thrall had 38.21 inches of rain in 24 hours. The flood of 1921 washed away bridges and some homes. The flood of 1957 broke the prolonged drought which had plagued central Texas for years, but it brought with it extensive destruction. Major flood control projects were undertaken to eliminate these disasters. Construction began in the 1970s. Granger Dam was built by the Army Corps of Engineers on the San Gabriel River east of Granger. Productive farmland was lost and enormous trees were felled, but the era of uncontrolled flooding on a massive scale came to a close. Lake Georgetown was formed with the damming of the North Fork of the San Gabriel River. Both these lakes provided everything an outdoor enthusiast could want: boating, skiing, fishing, camping, bird watching, and hiking. They also provide an invaluable source of water for the burgeoning population of the county. In the late 50s and early 60s, the interstate highway system was being built nationwide. Interstate 35 was constructed running the length of the county in a north-south direction, running along the Balcones Fault. The highway has been a major cause of growth. For years in the 1980s and 1990s, Williamson County was the fastest-growing county in Texas, and on a number of occasions was named the fastest-growing county in the United States. Cedar Park has the distinction of being the newest city in the county, but has already grown into the fourth largest in population. Growth in the 1990s included Sun City, Georgetown, bringing retirees from across the nation to settle in a charming county known for its quality of life, as well as recognition of the treasures and values of previous generations. Another new attraction is the massive wooden playscape at the edge of the beautiful San Gabriel Park in Georgetown. Built by more than 1,000 volunteers, the playground is a creative maze of towers, tunnels, and pathways designed to accommodate all children. Williamson County's first professional sports team is the Round Rock Express, a Double-A baseball team owned by Hall of Famer Nolan Ryan. 1998 brought a year of celebration as both Williamson County and Georgetown celebrated their 150th year. Events throughout the year brought the citizens of this county closer to its rich past, its sacrifices, and achievements. The Sesquicentennial Parade in October of that year gave everyone a chance to honor our past and look forward to our promising future.
We hope you enjoyed this look into the rich and diverse history of Williamson County, Texas. For everyone watching this documentary, we hope you will have a better understanding of the people and events that shaped our past as we give appreciation to those pioneers that led the way.